Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Friday, August 20th, and we're breaking down this massive 14 game set that we have over on DraftKings. And I'm going to be honest, this might be one of my favorite slates of the entire year. We have elite pitching options, we have great stacks to talk about. It's Friday, it's a big slate, what's not to like? Definitely looking forward to breaking this one down for you all. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. And if you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. We got a couple hundred people over there. I'd be more than happy to have you. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're a new signee over on Prize Picks, you can use code CPENN to get a free money bonus as an instant deposit match up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the pitching, then move on to the bats. And like I was mentioning earlier, we really do not have a shortage of good pitching options on today's slate. Plus, a lot of these guys draw really good matchups. Like, look at Robbie Ray. He faces Detroit. Chris Sale gets Texas. McCullers gets Seattle. Sonny Gray gets Miami. I mean, it's all good matchups here. And even Walker Buehler gets the New York Mets, who have definitely not been hitting the best recently. So, I mean, yeah, all these guys are in fantastic matchups. You really can't go wrong with any of them. But I'll definitely give you my favorites here. But we'll start up top with Walker Buehler. $10,500. So I actually kind of broke this down yesterday because he was supposed to be the starting pitcher. I broke it all down. I said the Mets will probably have a team total in the low threes, upper twos. Well, it's 3.16 here. And look, he's a fine option. I don't think he's a must play though, because I feel like we can get similar upside, if not even higher upside, with guys priced below him with Robbie Ray and Chris Sale. Those are my two favorite pitchers on today's slate. If you can play them both together, I would absolutely love to do that in cash games or tournaments or whatever you want to do. That's my preferred pitching pair. But it's not the thing you absolutely have to do. It's just what I prefer right now. But Buehler, he's been great all season long. Very consistent. His ERA is really good, below 2.1. Although I will say the XFIP and Sierra about a run and a half higher than that, and only a 27% K rate. I say only because 27% is still pretty good, but Robbie Ray's the guy that's at 30% this year. Lance McCullers about 28. Sonny Gray at 28.5. We only have a one-game sample of Chris Sale. It's at 40%, but over the course of his career, it's better than 27%. So it's like, I don't love Walker Buehler, especially at that price point. Like, I think he's going to be just fine. If I'm playing 150 lineups, I'll get some exposure to Walker Buehler because I like the matchup versus the Mets. He limits the power, gets a lot of ground balls, he limits the homers. Like, he should do just fine. I'd be surprised if he doesn't score over 20 plus fantasy points. It's just when you factor in the price tags, and there's some expensive stacks I like today. I don't see myself getting up to Walker Buehler as much as some of these other pitchers. And then dropping down to Robbie Ray here, just below $10,000, but he's been fantastic all season long. Draws a good strikeout matchup as a lefty versus Detroit. They do have some guys that hit for power versus left-handed pitching, but they still strike out quite a bit. If we're looking at their overall splits on the season, I mean, the strikeout department, it's pretty good, 26.5% of the time, but their WRC plus is approaching 100. WOB is around 310, OBP above 310, 145 team ISO. But the strikeout rate he's shown all season long, the upside that he has, I definitely think he's a very good option here. Plus, I love the Blue Jays stack today. I'd be very surprised if he can't pick up the win. Team total below 4 here, 69% chance for a win, and a 7.5 K prop over in Vegas, sporting over a 30% K rate. The problem is he gives up fly balls, he gives up homers, gives up some hard contact, and close to 200 ISO given up on the season, but I think he's going to be just fine. Love the price point compared to like a guy like Walker Buehler, because I feel like the projections, like I'm pretty sure I have Walker Buehler projected less than Robbie Ray in today's slate, and I can get Robbie Ray for $600 cheaper. So I think it just makes sense to pivot to him instead, but both are fine options. And then dropping down to Chris Sale here, $9,700. I would say he's my favorite pitcher on the slate. He draws a fantastic matchup versus Texas. He made his return last week. He looked flawless, had a very good game, had the strikeouts. It was versus Baltimore, and the guy looked good. He went 89 pitches, which was kind of the question mark, was like, how deep is he going to go into the game? I thought he'd go around 80, but getting close to 90 was very encouraging for me. So I think we could see like pretty much a full workload from Chris Sale here, 90 to 100 pitches. Probably not quite 100, but I think he's going to sit around 90, which is just fine enough for me. I realize he's closer to $10,000, but this is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Only a 3.2 implied team total against him. Texas sucks versus lefties. Their lineup is absolutely horrendous. He's a very heavy favorite, 7.5 K prop over in Vegas. And if we look at Texas's numbers on the season versus left-handed pitching, it's ugly. They don't really strike out too much, but only a 6% walk rate, 131 team ISO, well below 290, and 81 WRC plus. So Definitely liking Chris Sale quite a bit. He is my highest projected pitcher on the slate. And then dropping in Lance McCullers here, $9,500. I think he's a good pivot off the chalkier pitchers that we just previously mentioned in a similar price range. But he too draws a really good matchup as he faces Seattle. They're a team that will strike out quite a bit versus right-handed pitching. 3.6 implied team total against them. Pretty heavy favorite, 6K prop. Pitching in Houston's usually a good thing as it is a more of a pitcher-friendly park than it is a batter-friendly park. But the numbers on the year are pretty good, close to a 28% K rate. I will say his xFIP and SIERA about 3/4 of a run higher than his ERA, but can't really expect regression to happen really versus Seattle, so I think he'll be just fine. He limits the power, gets a lot of ground balls. I think McCullers is a decent pivot off of a very chalky Chris Sale, and more than likely a very chalky Robbie Ray today. And then dropping down to a cheaper SP2 option, we have Sonny Gray facing off versus one of the worst offenses in baseball on the Miami Marlins right now. I realize this is not a good park to use pitchers in. I mean, Great American Small Park this time of the year definitely caters to the bats, one of the best places to hit in all of baseball. But with that being said, they still only have a 3.5 implied team total against them. He's still a very heavy favorite, 6K prop over in Vegas. And while he's been a bit hit or miss this year, I know his ERA is approaching 4.5, but his xFIP and SIERA about a run lower, so he is getting a bit unlucky. A 28.5% K rate. The walks are a bit up, but he has a lean to the ground balls. Doesn't usually get killed in the power department. I like this price point quite a bit. Miami sucks offensively right now. Don't really have any good bats right now outside of Jazz, and even then, I mean, Slab's pretty brutal. 25% carry at the righties, only have 142 team ISO, 90 WRC plus, well below 300. I hate the park, but $8,400, I think Sonny Gray with his strikeout upside is definitely playable at that price point. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the pitching, so we can move right over to today's stacks. I just want to throw it out there that there's a lot of teams to talk about in today's slate. So if I don't get to a team that you like, there's a decent chance I probably do like them, maybe more so as one-offs or mini stacks, but I can't sit here and talk about every team or we'll be here forever. So just the ones I like the absolute most. But we'll start with the Atlanta Braves here on the road in Canyon Yards, one of the best places to hit in all of baseball, versus a pretty bad lefty in Keegan Aiken. I'll tell you right now, the Braves, while they're very expensive, a lot of these guys do hit left-handed pitching very, very well. Let me just pull up their splits versus left-handed pitching this season, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about. So Ozzie Albies, 257 ISO to lefties, 37 Wilbon, a 320 batting average. Jorge Soler, over a 300 ISO. Freddie Freeman, I know it's a lefty-on-lefty matchup, but I think that makes him an even better tournament play because at some point he'll see a righty and he can still hit lefties fine, so I wouldn't leave him off in full stacks, but probably not a cash game play for me. Austin Riley, it's an insane price tag, close to $6,000, but it's a righty-on-lefty matchup, batting cleanup. Dansby Swanson, close to $6,000. Like, a lot of these guys are overpriced. Like, Austin Riley and Dansby Swanson, you're not getting value there. But if you're full on stacking these guys and you have the money for them, you're going to use a cheaper pitcher to make it work or find a real cheap stack or some real cheap one-offs. But, I mean, it's definitely the best spot in the slate, in my opinion. Maybe besides Coors Field, but it's kind of just boring to say Coors Field's always the best stack, which, you know, technically on paper it usually is because of the Vegas implied team totals. But I love the Braves, so I think they can definitely pop off. Adam Duvall, Travis d'Arnaud's back, Jock Peterson. You could probably leave him off, but at some point you'll see a righty. So, I mean, if you just want to get contrarian, I think he's fine at the bottom of the order. But the main appeal here is Albies, Soler, Riley, Swanson, Duvall, all the righties for the most part, really. But this entire lineup is playable. And then moving on over to the New York Yankees, one of the few teams that have a team total above 6 on today's slate, but they draw a pretty good matchup versus a lefty in Charlie Barnes. The righties are the preferred plays, but you can use lefties in tournaments because at some point they will see a right-handed pitcher out of the bullpen. But DJ LeMahieu, he's only about $4,000 leading off. Aaron Judge crushes lefties. Joey Gallo, I prefer him versus righties, but he still has power versus lefties. Just strikes out a ton. Stanton, love him versus lefties in the mid 4K range. Think he's an excellent play. Anthony Rizzo, prefer him versus righties, but again, like Joey Gallo, he still has power versus lefties, and at some point he will see a righty. Luke Voigt, Gary Sanchez, Reynaldo Odor, Andrew Velasquez. All these guys are in play for me. I think this is one of the best stacks in the entire slate. I hate playing the Yankees, but when they're in a good spot, they're in a good spot, and I'll have to have some consideration for them. And then moving on to Coors Field, we have the Colorado Rockies at home facing off versus Mr. No-Hitter himself, Tyler Gilbert. I'll tell you right now, Vegas does not care. They're giving the Rockies a team total north of 6.5 today, which is one of the absolute highest on today's slate. Actually, might be the highest. I'd have to double check that. It's about the Yankees. It's about the Braves. I believe it might actually be the highest. Plus, the Arizona bullpen is not very good either. So if they can get Gilbert out of the game early on, it'd probably get even better here. But a lot of these guys do hit left-handed pitching actually quite well. Like, it's kind of surprising how good their splits are. Like Connor Joe above a 200 ISO. The batting average is terrible, but at least he has some pop versus lefties. Brendan Rodgers close to a 400 ISO over a 300 batting average. Trevor Story 276 ISO with a 115 WRC plus. Charlie Blackmon hasn't been great versus lefties this year in the power department, but still batting around 285, and he'll stay ready at some point anyway. CJ Cron always been a good versus lefties. 239 ISO. Ryan McMahon, He's a lefty and lefty guy, but over a 300 WOBA and close to a 200 ISO versus them this season. Garrett Hampson, 238 ISO, 386 WOBA, above a 300 batting average. And then Diaz here, close to a 200 ISO. Like, these guys actually profile quite well versus left-handed pitching. And moving over to the Toronto Blue Jays, they're playing at home versus a pretty bad lefty in Tyler Alexander. Plus, they should see a lot of the Detroit bullpen today, which kind of got abused yesterday versus the Angels. So I think this is a very good spot for the Toronto Blue Jays here. Obviously, no George Springer still, which kind of sucks overall for the stack. But guys like Marcus Semien, Bo Bichette, Vlad, Teoscar Hernandez have all been very, very good versus left-handed pitching this season. They can also hit righties very well. Then Gurriel, Grichuk, Espinal, Kevin Smith, Reese McGuire, those guys are fine lineup fillers. They're also a little bit cheaper, so they fit in your lineup a little bit nicer. And if you can't afford like the expensive guys, you could go bottom of the order and just hope those guys rank as well. But overall, the Blue Jays, definitely one of the best spots on the slate here. Team total approaching 6. Good spot for lefty, like I mentioned. I just don't love the price tags on all these guys, but if you can afford them, they're definitely in a very good spot. I just like them quite as much as the other teams that we talked about already. And then dropping out of the Boston Red Sox, they're playing at home at Fenway Park versus Dane Dunning, who I don't think is a very bad pitcher, but they don't typically let him work too deep into games. And I mean, this is just a good overall hitting team. So usually they're going to get the advantage over any single pitcher they face unless we get like an elite level guy. But Dane Dunning, I wouldn't say is quite elite at this point of his career, but I think down the road he'll definitely be very, very solid, but they're still being kind of cautious with his workload. But we have a team total close to 6 here today, and this is a pretty loaded offense. Kike Hernandez, Alex Verdugo, like that price point on Verdugo quite a bit, especially if he's in the 2-hole. Bogarts, Devers, love the lefty and righty matchup there. I think he's one of the better home run calls on today's slate. JD Martinez, Hunter Renfroe, Kyle Schwarber hits a little bit lower in the order these days since he's on his new team in Boston, but he has been crushing right-handed pitching this season, although he was out quite a bit with an injury. Then we had the All-Star break. Christian Vasquez is dirt cheap if you want a catcher on a good team today. And then Duran, $3,500. I mean, we don't have a huge sample size on the guy this year, but he's showing some decent pop versus right-handed pitching. And then moving on to the last team I want to talk about, we have the Cleveland Indians at home in Progressive Field versus Jaime Barrio, a very low strikeout pitcher, below 12% of the season, only like a handful percentage versus lefties. It's pretty gross. And I mean, I think we can target him. And these Indians are not that expensive. They have a team total north of 5 today, and pumped otherwise, they do grade out pretty well for me. Miles Straw leading off. He's below 3K. He has stolen base upside. I like getting guys that hit the very top of the order, and he's been playing pretty well recently. Rosario is a fine hitting shortstop. He's in the mid 4K range, or I should say lower 4K range. J-Ram, a very streaky hitter, but when he is on fire, he is on fire. Right now, he's been playing pretty well, so if you want to run the hot hand there, no problem with that. And if you're stacking the Indians, do not leave off Jose Ramirez and Framil Reyes. These guys are by far the best players on the team, and if they're going to score runs, it's more than likely going to be because of those two guys. Reyes has like a 300 ISO on the season. And then after those two, it gets real cheap once again. Zimmer, 2,400. Oscar Mercado, 2,300. Owen Miller, 23. Jimenez, $3,000. On the very bottom, we have Austin Hedges at $2,300. Now, they're not the best batters in the world, but they are dirt cheap with a team total north of 5 today. If you want some expensive stacks and expensive pitchers today, I don't hate dropping down to some of these cheap Indians. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks. It's just you versus the projections, and as of right now, if you're a new signee over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. That's going to be pretty much it. I will stop rambling. I'll see you guys on Saturday for the next video, unless you're watching the NASCAR video, which will be posted today at 7 p.m.